Yeah, oh yeah, I can interview Todd. Don't you worry. I can pick it up. An existentialist. Okay. I'm Fanny Kiefer, and this is Studio 4. Coming up, skate wings and crab cakes with lots of sass and spice from style queen, culinary queen Caren McSherry, and an unlikely posse becomes entangled in a drama that forces them to face their demons. Guy Vanderhaeghe is a Saskatchewan boy with a shy streak who writes great literary tales about cowboys, Indians, the wild frontier, Bible-quoting Civil War veterans, and uptight Englishmen. Vanderhaeghe grew up in a small mining town near the Manitoba border. His dad was a rodeo hand, his mom a secretary. Even though he has been writing stories since he could read, he still finds it does not come easily. In hockey lingo, he's a grinder. But when he grinds, his books become bestsellers. You remember him for The Englishman's Boy, I'm sure. His new work is called The Last Crossing. Guy Vanderhaeghe, the writer's writer, was visiting Vancouver last week, and he popped into Studio 4, and here is our conversation. Hi there.
Hi.
I said you have a shy streak, and I read that somewhere, and I don't know if you do or not. Do you still, or did you?
Well, I do have a shy streak. I mean, I can't approach people, but if people approach me, then I can sort of handle the situation. But I can't force myself forward. So if I'm at a party, I'm the guy who stands in the corner until someone speaks to me. Sure. I'm sort of like a pump that needs to be primed. So if someone primes me, engages me in conversation, I hope to God that I handle it okay after that.
You'll respond.
Yes.
Me too. It's very important to me that you talk back, you know?
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. Your wife, Margaret, is she a chatter?
No, actually, we're both, I think we both sort of have the reputation of being reclusive sorts. She's a painter. And so what we do actually means that we're fairly isolated and solitary. But every Friday night in Saskatoon, we go to sort of the artist's bar, which is called Lydia's, which is a hangout for musicians, painters, and writers. And that's our big night out once a week.
When you were a little kid in your cowboy clothes, did you, and I bet you wore cowboy
Yes,
clothes,
I did.
right?
My father has my tiny little cowboy boots bronzed.
I have bronze cowboy boots. Wasn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you ever have chaps or anything? Or
I never had
the
a pair
outfit?
No, I never had a pair of chaps, but I remember I did have a brown felt hat when I was about 5 years old, when most kids were wearing straw hats.
Sure.
Because straw hats were much cheaper. But my father was always big on a good felt hat. So when I was a little kid, I had a good felt hat.
A 3Xer, because
Yes.
you have to look at the X's in the back,
That's right.
right, to make sure. And a cowboy is really particular about his hat. It has to be a certain height, the brim has to be right. It all
That's
has
right.
to work.
That's right.
It was special color? Do you have to have a special color? You had brown.
I had brown. I don't know, my father was down on black and white. He thought
Yeah.
well, white for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But he had a thing against black hats. I don't know why. I don't think it had anything to do with the movies, but I never knew him to own anything but a brown hat. And since I was his only child, his boy, I too had to have a brown hat.
Sure. And I think it's all the Texas oilmen that wear the big white Stetsons, or maybe
That's
the
right.
Calgary boys.
That's right.
Can't mount a horse, can they? But your description in the book, The Last Crossing, of there's a character called Titus.
Right.
And he breaks a horse badly.
Yes.
I assume you've done that before, because you're so right on about how the horse reacts, what happens, and it's not out of the horse whisperer, believe me.
No. In fact, well, I should sort of leap to my father's defense here. He wasn't he was a very gentle breaker of horses, but there's a man that we knew, who I will leave unnamed, who basically broke horses. That's what he did.
Yes.
He sort of beat them into submission, or rode them into submission. But my father was always very careful to get a horse to the point that when he mounted it, it almost never bucked. So this is the other side of things that I saw. When my dad used to rodeo, you'd see the same thing. Certain men, how they loaded horses on a truck was that they beat them onto the truck.
Kicked him,
Yeah.
beat him, swacked him.
Yeah.
Did you want to ride Broncos?
I was too terrified. I mean, I did it once. I did ride when I was younger. I mean, obviously, because I had to take the cattle in and all the rest of it. But my father was such a particular man about who rode his horses, how they were ridden, that I always had this kind of feeling that I was doing everything wrong, you know. So I think it's been like 3 years since I've been on a horse. But
It still hurts.
Oh,
when you've been off one for a few years.
it hurts incredibly. I once helped there's community pasture, and it was the roundup in October. It was raining, it was freezing cold, and I had come home and I was recruited to help the men bring the cattle in. I was on a horse from about 6:30 in the morning till maybe 8 o'clock at night, with a half hour off for lunch. My legs were rubbed raw. I was so cold that my father had to undress me. I mean, in the sense, he had to unclasp the shaps because my hands were so cold and stiff. So I'm not that tough a guy.
No, that's why you're a writer.
That's right.
Yeah, you get to research it. And you write a lot about the wild frontier. Would you have liked to live then,
I don't
late
think
19th
so.
century? Any desire to go back?
Only in my mind, because if I lived in the late 19th century, I would likely have been dead at 25. So I have no illusions about how tough the life was, how hardy people had to be. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the idea like violent death, but disease, accidents, everything else.
Sure.
You were looking at a very short lifespan, probably an average of 40. And since I'm 51, I would have been dead
Been
for
long
11
dead.
years.
Somebody may have pulled out their Colt 45 and just taken care of you. Why not? Tell me about The Last Crossing, the essence of it, and then we'll go on from there.
Well, the sort of plot line of the novel is that there are two English brothers, one a military captain, one a painter, who are sent to North America to find another brother who has come out to evangelize the Indians and has gone missing. Yeah, he's lost. The two brothers form a kind of posse or search party for him that's led by actually a historical figure, Jerry Potts, who was a guide and scout for the Northwest Mounted Police in 1874. He was also a translator at the Treaties of the Blackfoot, and many people claim that he performed a diplomatic role during the 1885 rebellion when the Cree and Métis rose against the Dominion government. he's the man who's leading this wandering band all over southern Saskatchewan, southern Alberta, and as far north as Fort Edmonton, which is the present site of the city of Edmonton. There are also two other principal characters. One, a woman called Lucy Stovall, whose young sister has been raped and murdered in Fort Benton. She joins up with the Gaunts because she thinks that she'll be able to find her sister's murderer. And there's a Civil War veteran called Custis Straw, who's in love with Lucy Stovall, and he pursues her. So that's sort of the nucleus in terms of a group of characters, and the novel follows them through their adventures in the wilds.
Yeah, a ragtag bunch
Yes.
goes in search of Simon, the lost brother, and Lucy pretends she's searching for her husband who left her and dawdled off, but really she's trying to avenge her sister's murder.
Right.
There was a real Jerry Potts.
Yes, there was.
How did you know this? Where did you find him?
Well, when I was 10 years old, I remember reading an article in the Star Weekly, which used to be an insert in newspapers, and there was an article on Potts in there. I sort of became, at that point, I became infatuated because the article spoke of him as a kind of Canada's antidote to the gunslinging desperados of the American West. Potts was a great Blackfoot warrior, and he was presented more or less in that light. You know, a man who had killed probably 20, 25 men during his lifetime. So I got very interested in him when I was very young. But as I grew older and learned more about Potts, his work with the Northwest Mounted Police, I came to see him as a kind of tragic figure because his work with the police and during the treaty negotiations in the early 1870s and the suppression of the whiskey trade, what happened is that I think unwittingly he was destroying the life that he loved. You know, he was a trader. He was a man with 100 head horse herd. He had several pagan wives. He was very kind of intimately connected with Blackfoot society and the old way of life. Because he had a Scottish father who was a trader, Andrew Potts,
right.
He had a foot in both camps,
Sure.
the white world and the native world.
Yeah, and you say in the book that he didn't know where the red man started and the white man stopped. It was a conflict for him throughout.
Well, that's my supposition because I don't think anybody knows anything about Potts's inner life. What they know about are the famous battles that he fought, and many of the anecdotes about Potts I don't use in the book. I mean, one of them was that he had a friend called George Starr, and when they got drunk, the two of them would stand in the main street of Fort Benton, and they called it trimming mustaches, and they would fire pistols at each other. You know, the idea to trim the end of the mustaches.
And not get the ear or
yes,
the...
yes. So
yes.
He was that sort of colorful kind of character. But my feeling is that Potts, who spoke probably 5 or 6 native languages, who better than anybody else knew the geography of Montana, southern Saskatchewan, southern Alberta, must have been a much deeper and more intelligent man than he was presented. The two sort of popular versions of Potts, on the one hand, he's the closed-mouthed, hilarious drunk. On the other hand, he's sort of the killer desperado. I use the outward events of Potts's life, but it's my supposition as a writer of fiction that he must have been a much deeper and a much more complex man than we've come to think of him.
Sure, and he said in the book at one point, you've got the dilettante Englishman who thinks he's a military guy and he's a bit highfalutin, you know, really happy to be in the frontier because he can shoot antelope and be the hero. But Potts says, but he uses a compass.
Right.
And Potts makes it very clear. You don't use anything when you're guiding or scouting. You can lose.
That's right.
So you have to know the land.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's famous anecdotes about Potts. One of them is being caught in a blizzard with several Northwest Mounted Police, and somehow, in the account, he unerringly leads them to shelter. To a sort of coulee in which there's wood and shelter from the wind, and it turns out that he's snowblind, that Potts is snowblind.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sure how much truth you can give to
Right.
these sort of legendary stories, but I think as a metaphor about Potts, it speaks to how intimately he knew that region.
Sure. And me, who has no sense of direction.
Me either.
Zippo.
Yes.
You don't have any
No,
either?
no.
So I can't find my way downtown or to a suburb. I think I'm in Chicago. Hello, do I fly to Coquitlam or what? So that's not good. Noah Richter, I think it was Noah Richter, wrote about you that you can see, hear, and smell your characters. How did you learn to do that? How did you learn to use words so beautifully that it's true, you can take us right into the scene?
Well, I think the first, the earlier question about shyness, I think that many writers are observers rather than participants. And so if you spend a lot of your time kind of standing back and watching, you begin to understand the importance of details. And perhaps you pay a little bit more attention to sort of minutiae than other people who are more actively engaged in a situation. You may notice something more. From the time I was a child, I was the kid who sat in the corner and listened to the adults. And adults would forget that you were there, and you would, as long as you kept your mouth shut. And if you kept your mouth shut, you would learn all sorts of interesting things.
Sure.
So I think that idea of storytelling and learning the significance of details started when I was very young. I try to imagine myself in situations the way a method actor does. I try to think what it would mean psychologically to be in a situation. Then I spend a lot of time researching the details of what people might have worn, what it looked like, et cetera, et cetera. Now, for me, the details just ground the reader so that the reader has a sense of place and time. The story is always more important than the details.
Right.
But sometimes you can't tell the story unless you have the right details.
Sure, because in the saloon scene where they are burying Lucy's sister in the saloon, who's being raped, they cover the mirror.
Right.
Lucy covers the mirror. She, in all of her grief and angst and a horrible time for her, she remembers that is it unlucky?
Yeah, it's unlucky.
Unlucky.
And the
But
same.
how do you know that? Like, did you learn that in Saskatchewan when you were 10, or did you research it? Did somebody do it for you?
It's something that sticks in your mind. In fact, I think I'm not sure about this. I'm probably wrong. I think it goes back to the 19th century idea of a profound mourning, of wearing black for a year, and to cover a mirror psychologically means that you don't indulge your vanity by looking at yourself when you're in mourning. And from there it moves towards the idea of the unluckiness of an uncovered mirror.
Okay.
It's almost like you're courting disaster.
Sure.
If you would be so vain as to leave a mirror uncovered. And the same thing, the hymns that are sung at the service, I researched those. Discovered looked at 19th century hymnals, or even the kind of popular hymns that evangelists of the time used. Now, I don't try and give too much significance to that.
No.
But if you can find the right detail, I think that you can put the reader in the moment.
Sure.
To help them understand what it was like to have lived at that time.
Well, Custis Straw, who was the Civil War vet, who's now become a Bible-reading man, he can't carry a gun because of what he experienced in the war. And you say something in the book like, you could see the soldiers crossing his face, or something like
Yeah,
that.
the dead walking over
You put
his
it better.
face.
The dead walking over his face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the West was full of Civil War veterans, many from the South, but also from the Midwestern United States. People, from Illinois, Indiana, regiments, many of whom ended up in Montana. One of the reasons, I think, is that it was very much like the Vietnam War syndrome. After you'd gone through the war as a young man, it was very difficult to go home, that people didn't understand the agony that you had gone through. A lot of these men took their agony to the West, looking for a new life and a new place. And that in my mind is who Custis Straw is. He's a lost soul who's trying to find his place in the world and also what life means or ought to mean.
And a kind soul.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love the name, Custis Straw.
Well, again, you're talking about how things may stick in your mind. I thought that Custis Straw was an invented name, like the first name Custis. I was watching television maybe 2 months ago, and I learned that General Lee had a son called Custis.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know where the name Custis stuck in my head, but it seemed to me the right name for this character.
Guy Vanderhaeghe, our guest, his newest book is called The Last Crossing. It's a must-read. Nobody's given it a bad review. We'll come back.
Fanny Kiefer wears fashions by Margaretta. A wide selection of original designs can be found at 4 convenient Lower Mainland locations. Margaretta.
Fanny's makeup is provided by Fudge Cosmetics. Check out all their great products online. Fudge, we're different.
Transportation for some guests of Studio 4 provided by Helijet. The fastest way between Vancouver, Victoria, Langley, Abbotsford, and Seattle with over 250 flights weekly. Helijet, how time flies. Visit Helijet online at helijet.com.
Molson Canadian Canucks pay-per-view. 10 great games you won't see anywhere else. Bitter division rivals, the champs, the Avs, and the Leafs. Exclusive all-access coverage with your Vancouver Canucks from the morning skate till the bus leaves the building. Poland scores! 10 games for just $79.95. Make your place the place to catch all the Canucks action.
British Columbia in transition. Join me for interviews with the political newsmakers. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. live on Shaw TV.
Saskatoon's lone wolf author Guy Vanderhaeghe is visiting Studio 4. He is a prairie writer, a writer's writer with several books under his belt. He wins awards and brings us sparkling bits of Western history, drama, and family intrigue in his newest book called The Last Crossing. This one hasn't won an award yet, has it?
No.
Not yet. It's a little new.
Yes, it's a little new.
But Englishman's Boy won the Governor General's Award.
Yes.
Was it nominated for the Geller as well?
Yes, and also the International Impact Dublin Award. It was shortlisted for that.
Fabulous.
And it picked up several Saskatchewan Book Awards. Now, it sounds like I'm boasting here, but you asked the question.
And you are. It's okay. Pamela Wallen, born in Wadena, said she sees the world. Somebody asked her once why she thought she was such a good broadcaster, why the world thought, or not the world, but Canada. And she said, because I see the world through a prairie lens. I don't know what she meant exactly, except prairie people have a way. Do you find that as you travel the country?
Well, I think there are regional differences. I mean, quite obviously, that where people live conditions the way they think, and often the way they act. And I think the history, at least of Saskatchewan, which is a hardship province,
Right.
teaches people not to expect very much. I think it teaches people that life is hard, that it's not easy, and the way to deal with it is stoicism. To do that, I think, when you're talking about the prairie lands, I think what she may have been saying is that you have to look hard and clearly without illusions. I'm only guessing. I can't
Sure.
speak for Pamela
No,
Wallen,
exactly.
But I think that's what she may have meant.
Have you ever shot a gun?
Yes.
Because in one of the sentences in the book, you talk about putting your hand on a trigger. Not your hand, but the hand of the character. And something like you put your hand on a trigger like you would on a woman's nipple. I thought, my, that's a bit racy for The Last Crossing, isn't it?
Well, I mean, like almost every prairie boy, I grew up with guns.
Sure.
And I've divested myself of all my weapons, my shotgun, my Winchester, my .22, and all the rest of it. But a gun was a tool. Even when you were going to slaughter a beef, you had to shoot.
Yes. It helps to
Shoot
kill
the animal. Yes.
kill the cow first.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so everything from shooting gophers to all those kinds of things. I never had a romance with guns. I never loved guns. And I didn't particularly like hunting after I was in my early 20s. I mean, I used to go goose hunting, upland bird game hunting. I never hunted big game, ever. I've never shot a deer or a moose or an elk. And I think probably the sort of hunting of ducks and geese and all the rest of it was kind of a throwback to filling up the larder.
Of course.
Yeah.
And your parents hunted, and my the first I shot at a little squirrel with my BB gun once, and I hit him. Amazing. And he went stiff and went off the log, which you didn't make the connection.
Yeah.
Yes, you're shooting your BB gun, but you didn't really mean to kill anything or hurt anything.
Well,
Maybe it was a .22. It couldn't have been a .22. It must have been my BB gun.
I remember the first thing that I killed when I was a kid. I had a BB gun too.
Yeah.
And I was 6 years old, and there was a swallow sitting on a line, and I just sort of shot at it unthinkingly, and killed the swallow, and then I wept, and my mother helped me perform a burial service for it. So it was never that I was particularly bloodthirsty or enamored of hunting or.
Did you make a little wooden cross?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Of course, yeah.
I did all over the backyard. Little wooden crosses. Bring home all the
and the swallow was
animals.
buried on a wooden shingle.
Of course, I forgot about that. Did you ever have a button collection? And I asked this because in the book, Simon, the one who disappears because he's trying to, as you say, evangelize the natives or the Indians, had a button collection.
No, I never had a button collection, but my grandmother was sort of the local seamstress, that she made dresses for people. She did alterations for the menswear store and all the rest of it. And she had a huge bag of buttons, which when I was very young, like 2 or 3 years old, I was told not to mess with them, but I would still sort of sneak this bag and open it and look at the buttons.
You see, I always wonder where ideas come from for writers of fiction. Like, why did Simon have a button collection and not a stamp collection?
Right.
And probably somewhere back.
Well, it's sort of, you have a memory of something, or at least in my case, I had a memory of something that I was taken with when I was very young. All of these different shapes, and some of them were shiny, and some of them were some of the buttons were made out of jet, and some of them, et cetera, et cetera. And I was fascinated by that when I was a kid. So Simon has a button collection because he has the same sort of fascination. Now Simon is much older than I was when I was entranced with buttons. But in my mind, that also speaks to his innocence and his simplicity. He would rather play with buttons than the lead soldiers that his father buys for him.
How do you know when a book is done? How, do you know what I mean? Like The Last Crossing begins. How do you begin it to start with? That's not easy. But how do you know when it's done? It's finished. This is the last sentence.
Well, I would say that in my case, books are abandoned rather than finished. You know, it's sort of like parallel parking a car.
Right.
At some point, you say that's close enough to the curb.
Yes.
You know, I'm not going to keep backing up and going forward forever. There comes a time, I think, when you think that this is not perfect. This is not done to my satisfaction, but it never will be. Mm-hmm. You know, you recognize that, and that's the point at which I say, all right, I'm finished, and now it's time to move on to something new.
And do the characters, because your characters are so strong, do the characters live on with you?
Actually, no. But what I would hope is that the characters live on in the reader's mind, and that the reader can actually invent their own scenarios about the characters and what happens to them. One interviewer said to me, I want to know whether Charles Gaunt gets back with Lucy Stovall. I want to know what Lucy Stovall's life was like with Custis Straw. Mm-hmm. But I said to the interviewer, you invent that.
Yes.
You think that through. I once said that I think a short story is like a lighted window in the dark that you pass, and you see this light, and it holds your attention, and you wonder about it, and that a novel is kind of like a river that flows by the reader, and the reader's mind can move upstream past the point that the novelist leaves them standing on the bank.
Fascinating. Lucy Stovall in the book is a very strong woman. She walks behind the wagons on foot. Was your mother a strong woman?
She was an incredibly strong woman. So is my grandmother, and so is my wife. I mean, my entire life I've been surrounded by really tough, strong women. My mother was a sergeant major in the Canadian Women's Army Corps during the Second World War, who was actually in charge of rehabilitating wounded men when they came back. So she had to deal with men as a figure of authority. She was an incredibly tough woman.
What part of her was tougher than your father? Or was she tougher? Do you know there's a toughness in a female that's different than the toughness in a male?
I would, and I'm just going to say perhaps a strange thing to say. She was tougher than my father in that she was absolutely steely and resolute in the face of anything that was happening to her. When my mother was dying, I never heard one word of complaint. I never heard one word of self-pity. I never saw her shed a tear. That was her nature. It was, I was talking earlier about sort of prairie stoicism. Well, she took that to the nth degree.
Yes.
She's a very tough woman.
And your dad, as you said, it sounded like when he breaks a horse, he was a gentleman, and he thought about you when you were a little gaffer, that your legs were too long to ride a bronc.
Yes, to be a bronc rider. So you have to get the points of the spurs up over the shoulder when it comes out of the chute. And he always said that guys who were built like cigarette machines were the guys who made good bronc and bull riders.
So you had to be some kind of gymnast or whatever.
Short, stocky, compact.
Whatever.
Kind of guy.
What do you want us to take home from this book? As we live with the characters, what can we learn about us? Perhaps how we relate to our native peoples?
Well, I mean, one of the things about living in Western Canada is I feel we have to understand, because the native presence is so large, that there's a history that takes us to the present, and that we have to rethink the past to make a future for both peoples. So I mean, that's one thing. I think that many white people have really no understanding or knowledge about where we got to where we are now. So that's one of the things. The title of the book, The Last Crossing, in my mind, it's got many sort of allusions to crossing the River Jordan, to arriving at love, to all those sorts of things. But for me, the last crossing is the huge imaginative leap that you have to make to actually get inside the skin of somebody else and understand them. And I think that Native and white relations, like any race relations, means that you have to have a respect for cultures, and that you have to make an attempt to understand why the other person, or how the other person got to the position that they are.
And you say in the book at some point, all of us are looking for who we are.
Yes.
Maybe we're just never quite happy with our lot. We're always thinking there must be something else, or I need to find another part of me.
Well, yes, and I mean, human beings are I'm saying something that's obvious. They're incredibly complex. And sometimes the complexity of human beings means that we settle on one facet of ourselves or one facet of somebody else. And we hold on to that because we believe that makes us easier to understand, or makes the other person easier to understand. I think in part this book is about diversity, about how complicated human relations are. Culturally, in terms of gender, all of those sorts of words that float around us. But I just sort of hope that in reading the book, it might be a signal about how rich and diverse, and in many ways beautiful, human life is.
The ups and the downs and the sideways.
Yes, exactly.
How nice to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Well, thank you very much.
The Last Crossing, Guy Vanderhaeghe. Coming up, the culinary queen of everything, Caren McSherry, shares her gorgonzola pasta, favorite rice recipes, and much, much more. I smell some salmon over here.
To hear from you. Write us care of 1471 Pemberton Avenue, North Vancouver, V7P 2R9. By fax at 604-990-6114 or email studio4@shaw.ca.
It's the excitement, the challenge, the competition, the skill, the friends, the speed, the finesse, the agility, the teamwork, to play for the love of the game. It's the fastest team sport on ice. It's ringette. Ringette, it's everyone's game.
Oh, Gwendolyn, you're more beautiful than ever.
So the surgery worked?
Come to me.
Hey, watch it, Zippy. What are you, squeezing melons or something?
Oh, Gwendolyn.
Hey, this seat vacant?
No.
Why not bring the action home? With Shaw's pay-per-view, you can order the movies you want from the comfort of your home. And you're always guaranteed the best seats in the house.
So why did you choose Shaw Digital's Premier Entertainment Package?
My family gets a lot of entertainment for one great price.
I get full cable service. I love the 40 channels of commercial-free music.
You get access to pay-per-view movies and events.
So how much is all of this?
That's the best thing. It's all for one low monthly price.
Wow, that's all? How do I get it?
Just call this number. Call 888-472-2222 to order a Shaw Digital package that suits you.
Caren McSherry can not only spell tapenade, she knows how to make one. If you want to grill a proper porcini mushroom, whip up a coconut macaroon, or make a 15-minute pasta with gorgonzola to die for, she is your kind of chef. McSherry has just celebrated 25 years in the business of the cooking business. She runs a cooking school, a gourmet warehouse, and hobnobs with Julia Child and other culinary divas. She also writes cookbooks, and it is my pleasure to welcome Caren with her newest creation called More Than Salt and Pepper to Studio 4. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
And you too. Recognize these hands?
I do, because it's on the cover of the book.
And there's no head.
Well, how did your mother feel about that?
Oh, Clara was not happy. She said, well, I just don't understand, dear, why there's no head. I'm like, Mom, it's sort of, that's the deal now. She goes, well, it's not like you're really ugly. Why don't they have your head? We won't talk about that anymore. We'll talk about food.
Well, it's because it's trendy now to have cool cookbooks. John Bishop has his head on the cover and his chef's head on the back.
And no body and nothing, and so yeah, it all works. Yeah.
There you go.
So we could share. He can have the head and I can have the body.
Do you remember the first time you taught a class and actually got paid to teach cooking?
Yes, yes. 25 years ago, November the 22nd.
My, you do remember.
And it was amazing, and I was so nervous. My heart was pounding. I stood there, and there's 12 beady little eyes staring at me. And I'm like, what am I doing? Flying was way easier, because I was a flight attendant for CP Air, and I'm thinking, what have I done? Why have I chosen mayonnaise?
You
And
mean
there,
mayonnaise?
I'm fresh out of cordon bleu, thinking I know everything. I am like, you know, the goddess of food now, because I've come home from London and I'm just like all of this. But then when you get home and the grounding is there and all the professors and the chefs in the school and all the tutorial help isn't there, and you decide to make mayonnaise, it's like, and then somebody said, why are you making mayonnaise when Hellmann's has got it sort of perfected? Good question, why am I? I don't know. And anyways, I just crossed myself, looked to the heavens and said, make this work, because this could be the beginning and the end of my whole career. It worked, we moved on. I didn't do mayonnaise much more. Now we do it, but we call it aioli, and we do it in a blender, and it's way easier.
Exactly, and it lasts 2 weeks or
Thank
something.
you.
Okay, and does it spoil in the sun? Probably.
Oh, yeah.
Did Clara, your mother, teach you how to cook?
Clara, my mother, was probably one of the most interesting home cooks. Like, she could do like the best roast chicken, the perfect turkey dinner, the best roast beef, all of those sort of foods of the 50s. And because she worked, when I was in high school, then it became my job to get the dinner on the table. And she'd say, this is what I want, do this, 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 and this, and this. Or we wouldn't cook or eat until 7 at night. And so I used to do that when I'd come home from school. It wasn't gourmet cooking as we know it now. It was everyday family eating. And I had this aversion to meatloaf and all that, so I never was ever in charge of that because I just hated it. And I really detested scalloped potatoes. So when I did scalloped potatoes in my book, she went, well, you don't even like scalloped potatoes. And I went, please read on. It's the trendy thing, scallops, potato, hence scalloped potatoes. So I roast these beautiful slices of Idaho potatoes in the oven. I marinate the scallops in an Asian marinade, grill them, and pop them on top of the potato, and they are called scalloped potatoes my way.
I see, scalloped potatoes my way. And when you do those little thin slices of potatoes in the oven and drizzle a little olive oil, what do you cook, what temperature and how long?
Oh, cook them at about 400 degrees till they're really crispy for about 10, 15 minutes, depending on how you slice them, how thick they are.
Okay.
Now, while we're doing this, I'm going to make you a little something.
What are you doing? You're mucking.
I know.
Is that mayonnaise? I hope not.
No, God, no. Fanny, we can't eat mayonnaise now. Not for breakfast. Okay, this is goat cheese. This is chev, soft chev. And in it, I have Dijon mustard and some horseradish. Okay, so we're just mixing that in. Then, what I have here are poached or just slightly steamed fresh asparagus, to which I've cut in half. And the only reason that they're nice and green is because I have put them into ice water and then refreshed them and put them into a towel. Now,
did you do that this morning, or was this last night's project? Or do you have a helper?
I have a wonderful, wonderful nanny that's been with me for 13 years, Elizabeth, and she helps me do the prep. Because in between kids, and my son wanted to make cinnamon buns last night at 7 o'clock when I came home from work, so that's what I did.
Everyone needs a domestic goddess, don't they?
Crispy shallots, so they're just fried and real crisp in olive oil. That's going to go into the...
Can you buy those? You have to make them. not hard to make,
No,
right?
just if you can slice a shallot, you're in. Okay, so we're mixing that in, okay? There we go.
I'm about to dive into this. You know that. I've only had some green juice this morning.
That's not good.
Okay.
Now, because Christmas is coming up, the entertaining season, New Year's, blah, 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 what you're going to do is you're going to want to do this.
Do you like me as a helper?
I do.
I just sit here like a big lump.
You're going to fit that in. This is called a tureen dish.
Right.
Now, you can use anything that you have. You can use a loaf tin. You can use any shape. And
you're
the
going
reason,
to help. I know you're going to help.
The reason
because
that
I'm
you
not too good at
the saran makes you able to use any shape because you just pull it out. So this is what we're going to do. Now, the third component is salmon, not just any salmon, and I'm a big promoter of BC, huge promoter, because I think that we have to promote who works, lives, and makes an energetic living in this province. I love these people, West Coast Select, and I not only love it because I think they're good, but they make just an incredible product. This is called Indian candy. And what it is it's...
Is that politically correct?
It's wild. Let's put it that way. Oh my
Wild
gosh, we're
Indian
safe.
candy.
It's
Never
wild.
mind.
Okay, so what it's done is got almost like a bourbon maple. I'm not sure what it is. They're not telling me for sure.
Right.
And so what you do is you just simply peel off the skin, like so, and then flake it. And what I've done here is flake it. Do you feel like you're too clean? You don't want to get home? No, we don't want to do this.
I just had my nails done.
Fine, thank you.
You're the chef. I'm the diva
No,
today.
I always wear nail polish because you don't want to, who wants to see that you can have lunch under your nails? You have to wear nail polish when you cook, as long as it's not chipped.
Of course, that part, because then you don't know where the chips went, right?
Exactly. So
the
there
chips
we have.
fall where they may, but not into the salmon dip, surely. Okay.
So this is absolutely delicious. You can use it for other things, but fresh dill, the salmon, and now our cream cheese mixture. So you're going to hold
and the cream cheese is actually goat cheese.
Actually, goat cheese. Now, this is the other thing. Some people go, goat cheese makes me ill.
I know.
So then it's like cilantro. You love it or you hate it. Chev is like that. You love it or you hate it. If you hate it, then use cream cheese. And if you really have to, you can use the light cream cheese.
Okay.
Okay?
If
so
you
now
really have to,
if you really have
because
to.
I know that Julia Child taught you a lot about just going for it,
Go
right?
for it. And you know why? Because
Look
you
at here.
only use...
I better have some of this in case it's bad.
Brace yourself.
Okay.
And you know what? The goat cheese is better. It's lighter than cream cheese, actually. So what we're doing...
That's delicious. So a little horseradish in there. You
pushed
can taste
in.
that. You don't want me pushing.
No, we don't want you mucking. Okay, and then we're going to lay that down. Asparagus.
Which you sliced in half lengthwise, which is perfect.
You can do as many as you want. Now, bear in mind that you want to be paying attention, viewers, because you'll be calling me in about a week when you decide to have a party, and you're going to say, oh, that was so amazing what you did. That looked delicious. And it is. And I'm making such a mess of this perfect little studio, but
I know.
I didn't know that there wasn't
full kitchen.
But you know what? You
Mr.
don't
Shaw
panic.
says that's coming any day. You know, when we get into the new tower, maybe there'll be a full kitchen.
But we don't panic. We just make do. It's only food. We're not doing brain surgery. We're just cooking.
Yes.
Fresh dill.
Am I helping?
This isn't dirty. It's all washed and dried, and you're just gonna
Now I'm looking a bit prissy. Okay, fine.
Okay, just lay it in, like so.
Right.
Okay, and then the next layer, the final layer. Now, look how fast this is. We're doing this all.
Will this last until Saturday? Because I have a party.
It will. You can take this home.
No, come on, it won't.
Yes, it will. What's today?
Today is only
Wednesday. Well, nothing is
bad.
bad.
A little tired.
Well, boost it up a day.
Okay.
Salmon.
The crew won't let me, you know that.
Oh,
They're all going to devour this the minute this is done.
And...
Okay, now the little tureen holder.
Yes.
Available anywhere? Obviously the
pretty
gourmet
much
warehouse.
the gourmet warehouse.
Okay.
You knew that.
Of
but
course.
you could use dill.
Oh. You're
Go ahead.
Bossy.
Yeah, well...
Well, you want it on top of the asparagus or where?
Sure, just anywhere.
Or the bottom, just
we don't
throw
care.
her in.
Throw her in.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
You want
now
one
look
for your
at that.
hair?
Look at you.
Okay.
Now you're going to take
fabulous.
your end over, push it over like so.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my end
Okay.
and push. And what this does is it packs it all down. Now again, you don't need the fancy little tureen. You can use like a little loaf pan or any shape you like, because as long as you line it in the saran, it will be fine.
Okay.
So then you're going to take this little unit and you're going to refrigerate it 2 days. If your party's in 2 days, you refrigerate it, okay? So we'll just clean up your
Because
little
if we took it
area.
out now, it wouldn't be solid. Is that
Well,
correct?
it will.
Oh, I
It'll be.
can't do
It'll
that.
be firm
I'll have
enough.
green in my teeth.
Yeah, you will. You don't
Okay,
want
fine.
that. Okay, so we'll do
All right.
this, and then we're going to have our little tray over here. Okay. Now.
Okay.
Okay.
Look at this lovely boat.
Pushing, because we don't want. You don't want to cut it and then have like holes in it.
No.
Okay. Boom. Boom.
This would be great. I've always wanted to have a Kel disaster on the air. Wouldn't that be great? Falls on the floor or something.
We can't because we have no backup like they do
Well,
on the
where's
Food
a man?
Network.
We need a man. Oh, there you go. No, we don't.
No, we don't. Now look at that.
Oh, wow. So
That's
the side,
cool? Look.
I thought we were going to have to take it out of the saran. I was thinking, what if it does a... Oh, that's fabulous.
Now we're just going to do this.
Yeah.
So if the top if you run out of a layer for the top, don't worry because you want to make the bottom layer your best layer.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
I kind of pull that out.
Ooh.
And then take these.
You can also grill asparagus.
Oh, they're the best. Aren't they the best?
Yes. In the oven. You just
Yep.
put them in the
Oh,
oven,
yeah.
drizzle a little olive oil, a little salt and pepper.
High heat. Don't be afraid of high heat. 450 degrees, shake them in a pan.
Yes.
And sea salt, ground pepper, oh, delicious. And make sure you shake. They're ready in about 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Don't be afraid of high heat. That's the way to go.
Okay, you high heat a lot in the oven, so
High
to
heat's
speak.
huge because it cooks quick and it preserves the flavor and it doesn't get soggy. Soggy sucks. Pretty much.
So 450. Do you do chicken at high heat, like when you're just
Huge.
throwing in some chicken?
Here's my secret for the chicken. Because I work, come home, 5:36, take a fresh free-range chicken and cut it up the back. And open it and flatten it. Squish it down flat. Olive oil, sea salt, pepper. 450 degrees, your chicken's ready in like an hour and 15 minutes. So by the time you've got your veg, your salad, and you've gotten into your comfy clothes, your chicken's ready.
And it's spattered all over the oven, but who cares?
But you know what? No one's
now
having dinner
self-clean.
in your oven.
That's true. No one's
It's a
allowed to
closed
open
door
my
thing.
oven.
Don't open it. When you invite people over and come and see my new house, do they open your oven?
Not
if
often.
they do, they're not invited back.
Exactly.
You'd be slapping those hands.
Exactly.
So that is our tureen.
Okay.
And
That's
then,
beautiful.
isn't
It's
it?
beautiful.
There you go.
And we probably have to have a cracker with it for
and
later.
that would be there. You'll try
Whatever.
that later.
Yeah, we have some
Okay.
lovely crackers.
So was that quick?
That was great.
That was very quick. So
Have you-
everybody could do that.
Okay, and you also make sushi in the book. Are there tricks to making sushi?
Yes.
Keeping
Now,
the rice
when
together
I
in
went
the...
to Japan, yeah, it was. This is a great story. I was introduced to the president of Japan Airlines when I used to fly, and that's how I got to go to all these really cool things because I met people, and it's never what you know, it's who you know. That's life, so get over it if you're looking for an alternative plan that's not there. So I happened to know the catering manager for CPR, who in turn knew the president of Japan Airlines, who in turn thought that this little white girl would be a great cheerleader for Japanese cuisine. So I got invited to work in the kitchen of Japan Airlines. And it was just a huge coup. No one could believe it. So because I flew, of course, you get to fly on your passes. And so I went to Tokyo and, went in and met them and not speaking, only polite Japanese for the airplane. Hello. And it's a lot of bowing.
Yeah,
and
hi.
If you're in doubt, just flip and bow. Okay. So then I met
I guess
him
you won't be teaching business etiquette, multicultural etiquette, but that's okay. When in doubt, bow. Okay.
And then I met the chef, and then they take me down and get the little uniform on and everything, and they're all laughing, and they all giggle, and they giggle behind their hands. And so then we're walking down the hall, and he's taking me to the rice station and the this station and the sushi station and all the places that I would be working. And so I'm walking and trying, I called up a Japanese girlfriend to get some phrases that I could not be a complete loser. So I'm walking down the hall, and the corridor's huge in their kitchens. It's like floors and floors. Imagine how big Japan Airlines is. And this little chef, I felt quite comfortable because he was little like me, short. And I'm walking and talking, and the faster I walk, the faster he's walking. And then he's walking faster. And I'm thinking, well, why is he walking so fast? I'm trying to chat with him and have a conversation. Well, unbeknownst to me, this is the biggest faux pas in Japanese culture. A woman and in particular Caucasian woman, would never, never walk at parallel to the man. It's a fall behind deal.
Okay.
I was supposed to be 3 paces behind talking to him. And because he was the superior, I could never be chatting like this.
Yes. Oh, I know some North American men like that.
Oh, well, we won't talk about that, will we? The Japanese guy got away with it. It was his culture. So he's like dying because I'm violating his culture. Yes. I'm the ignorant one, not knowing that I should have been paces behind. But at the end of it, we all made up, and as the Japanese go, showers of gifts and everything.
And he got a lot of exercise. But when you're doing the rice for sushi, and I know it's a little tough to roll and all of that, it's hard to get it to stick together.
You know, you need, the secret is, it's in the book, it's very easy. You need just the Japanese sticky rice, and it's sticky all by itself. But what the important part is the seasoning, which is sugar, salt, rice vinegar, and you boil that up and pour it over hot rice. And this sounds ridiculous, but you actually have to fan the rice as it steams so that it doesn't get all gummy.
Right.
It's almost like a lifetime career making rice in Japan. And then you let it cool, your hands are wet, and then you spread it. And if your hands aren't wet, it will stick and you'll just have big rice pits.
Rice paws.
Yeah.
Yes, that could be a new dish for the next cookbook. Is there a next cookbook? Well, let's give one away.
Okay, let's.
We're allowed to give one away. This is a fabulous gift, by the way, because you can plunk a bottle of olive oil with More Than Salt and Pepper. Or how about salt and pepper?
How about salt and pepper?
Wars were fought over salt, right?
Exactly. The word came from the Romans' sal, as in salary, where they used to pay the warriors in salt, little packets of salt that they wore on their skirt.
Sure. And there's many kinds of pepper, but if you gave some great peppercorns, like what? Pink peppercorns, green peppercorns.
Or telecherry peppercorns.
What's it called?
Telecherry.
Telecherry?
Telecherry or Malabar or the good peppercorns, the best come from India.
Okay, and this book and a nice bottle of wine.
And would be awesome.
Christmas is over. Okay, we have a very tough question for you. What is your favorite spice? Tough questions here at Studio 4.
I would have given
And if you email us by, there's always a date, November 27th, we will send you, if you are the lucky winner, a book called More Than Salt and Pepper by the lovely Caren McSherry. And you said there's another book in the offing at some point, yes?
Yes, I think so. Well, I'm working through this one. The part that I like the best about this is that we sort of come to an era where we have so much infusion of other cultures, and all of their condiments play a big part in our cooking.
Sure.
And people look at it and they go, what is preserved lemon? Like you think you know, but you don't know, and there's never sort of a one book source that you can get that question asked. You don't want a full thesis on it. You just want a synopsis on what it is.
Sure, but you also tell stories about your friends, from Jill Kropp to your television friend to your best friend.
Yes. Diane Lawrence and Sue Meister, they've been with me. In the acknowledgments, I say I have to say thank you to my 2 best friends who poured wine while I wined through this whole process. They loved that because we drank a lot of wine in this process because they said, when is this over? You know,
never.
It's never over.
No, but I like being in your test kitchen. That's the best. Anytime you want me to come, I'll be happy to come and try a lovely terrine or whatever. I could have been fat as a little, you know what. I thank you.
You're the best.
How nice to see you.
Thank you.
More Than Salt and Pepper, Caren McSherry. Tomorrow, if you want to be a healthy boomer and find some balance in midlife, 2 experts from the Midlife Clinic in Toronto will come in with some no-nonsense advice about how to grow up and grow older the right way. As Benjamin Franklin once said, life's tragedy is that we get old too soon and wise too late. And Joan Klucher, the dog trainer, will bring in her own pooch, if I can say it, and talk about yours. Thanks for watching Studio 4. There'll be lots more.